Did you ever think that the faker Shockwave would still be talked about today?
I've always been of the opinion that controversy creates content. I've gone back and I've watched the play 100 different times. I still believe that I'm right.
Do you like the new Skarner?
I think that he is a much better fit for modern League of Legends. That being said,
Going back to Ludwig, did you ever think he would hit Plat?
I even told him, if you guys keep this up, you will hit that goal.
Captainflowers, this interview has been a long time coming. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, brother. I'm doing good. It's always a good time to be able to reunite with people that you knew from what is now back in the day, but back then was like a grassroots experience, a community in League of Legends that honestly I'm pretty sad faded away like it did. But I think that obviously the fact that we're talking here together means that a lot of those encounters, a lot of those relationships, a lot of the people that you met in situations like that, no matter how long ago, it's always fun to kind of rekindle those and see what people are up to.
Of course. Yeah, no, I met you when I was a wee grade 10. And now,
yeah, you did not. You look much more like an adult guy instead of like a teenage kid. Now it's amazing what 8 years does to people.
I didn't have the beard. I think you look the same. Like, I'm gonna be honest.
I get that more often than you would think. People tell me that I don't age because I've had a couple times where, you know, those like Twitter trends where people post like, oh, show us a picture of you from 10 years ago and you from now, and all of mine just look the same because I'm just like the default big chin, short haircut white guy from a video game. So they're just like, oh yeah, it's just the same guy.
I actually wanted to thank you, Flowers. I never actually told you this,
Okay.
but your Skarner build got me to Diamond in Season 6. Do you like the new Skarner?
So new Skarner, I think that he is a much better fit for modern League of Legends. I think that he's a much more properly built character for kind of like the opponents, the situations, the game states that you're going to find yourself in modern League. That being said, obviously, I'm always the old Skarner will always be my favorite champion in all of League of Legends, right? Like I played that character for a decade. I was the best there was at that character. I knew all of that character's thresholds and matchups. So old Skarner will always be number one in my heart. But I knew that old Skarner obviously would not be able to change when they announced a full-scale rework. So in terms of the rework, I am happy with kind of how they still kept him this big, pissed off, angry Clint Eastwood on the porch type of character. They still made him badass. They didn't turn him into an anime twink. They made sure that he was still cool and he felt menacing to play. So I'm happy with how the rework went.
There you go. That's awesome. And did you get to test him out when they were making certain rework or when they were reworking him?
Yes, I actually got an invite. So Skarner came out. He hit live on early April of 2024. And in January of 2024, I went into Riot and I got to be a part of the private internal play tests. I got to play a couple games with them, and then I sat down with the dev team. Dev on everything from in-game to lore to like the way that they were approaching the skins, like developers from all sorts of the rework of the character. And I talked to them for a couple of hours as well. And so Riot was really good about like reaching out to me and being like, hey, you're the Skarner guy. We want you to take a look at this. We want to get a feel for how you feel about it. One of the most heartwarming things about it was actually when I first went in, like before we loaded into the first game, and they were kind of telling me like, okay, here's kind of what you can expect. Here's a brief rundown of the new kit. They were telling me that as they played through different iterations of the character during the design phase over the course of the 2 years or whatever that he was in dev, one of the questions that they would ask each other is, will Captainflowers play this? Because they know that I am the biggest voice, the biggest advocate for Skarner out there. And so it just feels like it feels really flattering, I guess you could say, to have them consider, oh, so this is who we think of when we think of Skarner. This is who we think of when we think of current Skarner players and who we want to make sure that we're still keeping when we redesign the character. So that was just a really wholesome moment. I was really flattered by that. I was really happy to hear that. But yeah, I did get to test it behind the scenes and kind of get a sneak preview. I remember as soon as I played one game with it, I told the devs, this is going to be pick, ban, and pro, and the E is one of the top 5 strongest basic abilities in all of League of Legends. It's up there with Yone's Soul Unbound, Akali's Smoke, Graves' Smoke, and now Mel's W and Skarner's E. Those are the top 5 strongest basic abilities in the game. Veigar Cage, I think, is number 6. But it's up there. It's that strong. And I told them it was going to be pick ban, and look what happened, bro. Most played, most presence jungler at Worlds. It's still permaban in solo queue right now. All I'm saying is Captainflowers called it, and unfortunately, when I did do the playtest, I was under NDA until the character actually released. So I wasn't able to say that out loud to people. So now there's no evidence that I called it early, but I'm telling y'all, I called it early.
And so, like, was there any abilities that didn't make the final reworked change that you played?
No, so since I was playing in January compared to April, the abilities were all pretty set and locked in. It's just they made they made different numerical tweaks, different like cooldown adjustments and things to them. There was no like ability that was not there in the final version, in the version that I played in January. In other characters that I've played when they were in alpha, that has been the case on different characters. I can tell you, for instance, I played years ago. This was back when I was still full-time salary with Riot. I played Aatrox when he was in dev, like when they were doing the rework of him from the old like slashy floppy sword attack speed man to the new more like modern Riven type of bruiser. And when I tested Aatrox, he was a gray blob of polygons because his model wasn't finished yet. And he had his Q and he had his little dash. His W didn't do anything. There was no chain. It didn't do anything. I think it made his next auto attack hit harder, and it was literally called placeholder ability. But that was an example of one that was different because I played it so very early. But that was years ago at this point, like however many years ago the Aatrox rework was. But no, for Skarner, all of the abilities were already pretty finalized in terms of at least how they would function. But the specific numbers did obviously get hammered out a little more. When he released, he had that turbo obnoxious like W max top lane build that had to get nerfed with Comet. So not all the kinks were ironed out, but it was mostly there.
Right. You know, going more so towards your casting career now, I want to take you back. Like, how did you first get into casting?
I mean, I've talked about this a few different times in the past. It's something that there's not really any glory story to it. It's not like, oh my God, I was born for this, man. I just knew as soon as I came out of the womb, I was ready to cast. Nothing like that. I was, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after I graduated college. I was someone who was good at school, but I did not enjoy school. And so by the time I was done with 4 years of college after, 12 years of normal school, man, I was just burnt out on academics. I didn't want to do grad school. I didn't want to do any of that other stuff. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I just went home, and my dad had a landscaping company. And so he told me, he was like, hey, you're welcome to, stay in your room not just stay in your room like a hermit, but like you're welcome to live here at the house in your room. You can work for the landscaping company while you figure out what you want to do. And so I shoveled dirt for my dad for a couple of years, just kind of aimlessly, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And at the recommendation of my dad and my friends being like, oh, well, you like games. There's got to be is there like a gaming thing you're interested in that you want to try to pursue? And commentary came to mind because I always was someone who enjoyed public speaking, who enjoyed entertaining people. I obviously had a lot of knowledge on League of Legends because I just spent so much time playing the game all the time. Back in those first years when it came out, like, man, I was eating, sleeping, breathing nothing but League all day, every day, skipping class to go play League if there wasn't a quiz that day, making sure if my friends invite me to a game, hey, is it League? If it's not, all right, you guys have fun. Hit me up if you want to play League, right? Like, it was just League all day, every day. So I knew everything. And it was just at their recommendation. Honestly, I never thought I had a chance. And I just kind of did it to shut them up. And so I just found a random tournament on the forums that had some random guys putting it together, and you could tell that they were real experts at this because they had forgot to find casters, and it was 20 minutes before their thing started. And I just happened to find it at the right time, and I casted that. It had a grand total of 8 viewers. 5 of them were me and the guys putting it on. But the other 3 guys in chat all said they really liked the commentary. That was the first time I ever did commentary in front of other people. Before that, I had just been recording myself casting my friends' solo queue games and watching them back privately. So after I did that, that's when I went around looking for like a more regular gig because, you can't just do forum tournaments forever. They're kind of few and far between. And that's how I found House Party, which obviously you're familiar with kind of where the story goes from there. You were a part of House Party. For all the viewers watching, House Party 5v5 was a Reddit league. Back in 2015 was when I joined it. I think they started in 2014. They would just run kind of an LCS style circuit. Their motto is LCS for the rest of us. It was a really cool community. Usually their shows would have on average somewhere from 50 to 70 viewers. But then when they had their playoffs at the end of each one of their splits, it would be like 100 people, and everybody in the community got really excited. People made shit posts and fanfics and like roster breakdowns and all this. People were super into it. And for like that heyday of 2015, 2016, it was awesome. It was one of my favorite experiences to this day I've ever had in any video game community was House Party 5v5 and what we did with them. And then, yeah, the clip that kind of broke me through and got me to Riot was the total turnaround at Bear and Captainflowers goes berserk. That's the actual word-for-word title on YouTube for anybody watching if you haven't seen it.
Yeah,
it's on YouTube. It was just a clip from from the opening tournament of one of the House Party splits. The owner of House Party posted it to the main league subreddit. It went viral overnight. Got 250,000 views, and I woke up the next morning with an email in my inbox from a Riot Games email account. Said, hey, I like what I saw on Reddit. Let's have a chat sometime. I would learn later that this was the executive producer of the NALCS at the time who messaged me. And that started a 9-month interview process from April of 2016 all the way through the end of the year. And then January of 2017 was when I joined the LCS. So it was a long journey, but it was a lot of fun.
I remember like every time we would get on TeamSpeak, I'd be like, so Flowers, what's going on with that interview? What's going on with that interview? And I would just want constant updates because, yeah, you would give me little tidbits here and there. And then finally there was that one day where I was like, hey, I haven't talked to you about this in a while. What's going on? And you're like, I don't think that there's going to be much update for a while. The next day you post on Twitter, hey guys, I'm a full-time Riot caster. And I'm like, what the hell?
It's so fun to do. I just love doing that kind of social media bamboozle type of thing. I've never got bored of it even after all this time. That's what I did for our I managed to actually prank a lot of people this year with it because they're changing the LCS name to the LTA with like the Americas rebrand, doing it in the same structure as Valorant is. And so I made a post talking about how after 8 full years with the LCS, it's finally time to walk away and start something new. And a bunch of people freaked out about it because they really liked the casting. But then I just said, oh yeah, the new thing is we have a new name. And so a bunch of people got pissed off. A bunch of people said that they had a heart attack or whatever. But it was a lot of fun. I just enjoyed doing those types of things.
Of course. And so still going back into, your origins with Casting League, how did you get better at casting? Was it just weekend after weekend, or did you practice cast?
So back when I was first starting, I did a ton of practice casts. I do think that the most valuable thing that you can do as a commentator to get better isn't practice casting. It's reviewing your own VODs, and I think the most effective way to do it is to do it 24 hours after the cast. And this is something that I've kind of refined as I've been a professional and looked at the way that I've gone back and done things. Like these days, I've been doing this forever. I am what I would consider a seasoned professional. And so I don't really do practice casting anymore. I still do community casts. I still do Twitch chat stuff, but it's not for the purpose of practicing. It's for the purpose of entertainment, right? But I still sometimes have weekends for LCS, LTA now. Sorry if anybody from LCS/LTA is watching this. I know the name. I'm just calling it LCS for familiarity's sake. But for LCS, sometimes, we'll have a day where I'm just like, man, I thought my cast today was shit. Not objectively, but by my own standards, where I think I should be putting up a 9 out of 10 minimum. I thought this was a 6 or a 7. I'm going to go watch and see. And the way that I go about doing that is the reason I say you wait 24 hours is because I think it's important to allow your initial perception of the cast to present itself in full, right? I want to be able to think back in the moment and be like, oh, I thought this was bad. I don't think I handled this fight well. I think I could have articulated better here. Even though those thoughts are the negative ones, I need to experience all of those thoughts so I can see what my initial impression was, because the greatest learning can then occur when I compare and contrast my initial impression with a more objective analysis that I get watching it back later. This is why I tell everybody to VOD review, because when you're in the moment, so much of your mental capacity is going to be focused on keeping track of everything, making sure that you're there, you're present. 95% of what you're doing as a play-by-play commentator is improv, right? It's not like you're just preparing ahead of time and saying canned phrases. So much of that is just making sure you're present in the moment. There are things that you're going to miss. There are details that could be more optimized. And when you go back and watch that just as a viewer later, you'll be able to pick up on much more of those. And sometimes when I've done these VOD reviews, I've realized like, oh yeah, that was bad. I definitely should have talked about this, this, and that. And other times when I go back, I'm just like, in the moment, I think I was so absorbed in what I was doing that I was flaming myself for stuff that really wasn't real. And when I watch it back later, I'm like, that actually sounded fine. I think that I was overreacting to what I thought was a negative there. But that's why you do it. Because then you're able to sharpen your mind for the future and say, I now know that if I feel that this is a trip up during the cast, it's not. And I'm overreacting because my mind is too focused on the things that I'm already immersed in, so I shouldn't let that distract me. Or I did learn that this was bad. Now I know for next time, don't default to that and remember this instead.
You know what's crazy is that you'll say that one of your casts is a 6 out of 10. And I think that if a normal person or even like a seasoned caster is watching that type of broadcast, they're like, this guy's amazing. So like, how do you like what is your like your top standard? Like what is your 10 out of 10 match that you've casted?
KT versus IG base race 2018 Worlds quarterfinals game 3. That's the one that gets reposted all the time. That's the one that people love. It's one that I use as a learning mechanism to show people how to use mental tricks to convince them that you're actually a lot smarter than you are. I think it's one of, if not my best casting moment in terms of both mechanical execution, knowledge of what to do in terms of the craft and the presentation, and just general like hype and gravity of the moment. KT versus IG, game 3, final play, Worlds quarterfinals 2018. That's like, I'm not even going to call it the gold standard, man. That is the challenger standard right there. That's the one that everything else is measured against. I'm so sad that wasn't the world final that year, and instead we got that dog piss Fnatic versus IG matchup instead that lasted 60 minutes of total game time.
Yeah. I think what's so funny about that clip, and you've talked about this in a YouTube video, is that you do certain things for spacing. You talk about the Fiora, the Shy will not, and then that's your prediction. I also kind of feel like your body movements are also a bit of spacing, because when you go down, like when you go down to cast on the desk, then when you come back up, it's like you don't say anything, which is, it's very interesting just to watch like a caster analyze that.
I wish I could tell you that the body movements thing is a intentional aspect, like the pauses are after the Shy. You're absolutely right about the pause with the Shy. Like that is what I explained to people. That's what I mean about the kind of tricking people into thinking that you're smarter than you are, is the brief pause after the Shy, and then you see if the camera stays or if it moves, and that's how you know what to say next, while it still sounds like a natural pause without buying time. But the body movements are just me being into it. People always ask me if I had, like inspirations or kind of role models I looked up to in commentary from traditional sports. And I'm not someone who watched a lot of traditional sports, really. Like I would watch, if there was like a big Ohio State Buckeyes game, because my dad's a huge Ohio State fan, right? Growing up in small town Ohio, I would watch that with him. But I was never super invested into traditional sports. So I never had like a traditional sports commentator that I looked up to or emulated. A lot of what I take my projection and my excitement and my emotion from is heavy metal singers, like Ronnie James Dio, great example. And when I think about some of my favorite like heavy metal vocalists, they're very performative in the way that they sing. It's all these exaggerated movements, right? Like they're coming from a magical world, casting some kind of a spell. And when I get really into it, that's just how I naturally behave, because when, even when I was a little kid, when I was a teenager, like watching these old heavy metal music videos, I was like, man, these guys are so cool. And so in my brain, like that's what excitement is. That's what hype is. That's what raw emotion and lightning in your blood is that. And so when I'm super into it, there was one back where I remember Worlds 2017. It was the first time I did an international event. And Vedius was recording one of the casts, and I was watching what was going on in front of me, and I had my hands in front of me like this, and then Xayah does an ulti, and that's what ends up ending the fight. And so when I yelled "Feathers Fly," I did the Xayah animation without thinking of it. I was like this, And then Vedius takes like a recording of that and posts it on TikTok or whatever, and everybody loves it. They're like, "Oh my god, this guy's so fucking extra. He's doing the Zaya animation. What the hell is this? This guy's not." Some people loved it. Some people thought I was an absolute crackhead, but it doesn't matter because that's what I was doing in the moment. That wasn't something that I was like, "Oh yeah, I need to do this in case Vedius is recording." It's just like, this is cool to me. This moment is cool, and this is how I immerse myself in the moment.
The one that I remember the most, and it was from your first ever cast, is you went 1, 2, 3, 4, shoots him down. Yeah.
The Varus arrow animation.
Yes.
Fun fact, the girl who was my interview coordinator for all of my interviews for Riot in 2016, her name's Julie. I still talk to Julie sometimes, and that is also her favorite one. She always jokes about that. She was like, "Yeah, we got you here," and then I look up and I watch the screen. The first thing you're doing is this bow and arrow animation.
And Kobe is looking at you like, what? Like, I feel like you were the one that started that, just the animated caster experience almost.
I mean, if I did, that's awesome. If I didn't, that's awesome. It's the fact that I was able to get the reaction that I did out of Kobe, who's someone who is also so genuinely excited and passionate about the things that he does. That's like a stamp of success to me. Because when somebody who's that excited about what he's doing and who's that into the things that he's doing is like, damn, this guy is too. Mm-hmm. That's true praise, I think.
Going back to our many conversations in House Party, I remember at one point you applied for an EULCS position as a caster, and then you never heard back. Like we were constantly like, Flowers, did you get it? And it was no, I don't think so. I haven't heard back from them. What did that moment do for you? Was there any doubt that caused, or was it just, I'm just gonna keep going?
So that was at the end of 2015. So to just give timeline context on this, 2015, I had never casted a game of League of Legends before summer of 2015. I think it was like June or July 2015. So almost 10 years ago at this point. We're about half a year away from the 10-year mark. Was when I first ever casted games, just friends playing solo queue, recording them only for myself, watching them back myself. Later on in 2015, I think around October or November, the EULCS, because it was called that back then. I'm not dissing you EU guys that might be watching. That was back when that was still the name. They posted an opening for play-by-play commentator, and so I posted a link to like my YouTube casts and stuff like that. And you're right, I never got a response from them. And initially, I was like, "Fuck, man," because living in the middle of nowhere in Ohio, there's no esports presence, right? I had one guy on my friends list in-game who was Challenger. That's the closest I was to anything ever relevant to esports. That's it. I had no connections. I had no pre-existing way to know what to do. I had no guidance. I was kind of just flying by the seat of my pants. And so when I did not get a response, and, after 3 weeks or whatever, by the time you would normally get a response by then, I was just like, okay, shit. So clearly I don't really know what I'm doing. But I was like, okay, clearly it's not good enough. Clearly something is not on the level yet. So I have to keep going. That's kind of where I settled with that. And funny enough, it ends up being around that time, around the end of 2015 is when the play happened. Syndicate gets annihilated, the total turnaround at Baron. It wouldn't be for a few months later. I think it was in March. That Anson was our House Party 5v5 founder and leader. Shout outs to Anson if you're still out there, bro. Hope you're doing good. But yeah, it was around March, I think, when Anson posted that to the main Reddit and it went viral. But right around that same time that I did not get a response from EULCS was around when that play happened. And so I think, if nothing else, that is sufficient evidence to say that I was not deterred, that I was doing everything that I could to continue to improve. Even if at the time I had been proven that I was not good enough by the people who make the calls, I was still determined to get to that point. And right around that point, I was making the call that only a short time later, even though I didn't know it yet, would be the thing that did catapult me forward.
Yeah, we've talked about it now twice. Syndicate gets annihilated. That was the clip. Captainflowers, he goes demon mode. Everyone's like, hire this guy. And then what's so awesome is to see people going back to the YouTube video 9 months later and saying, Oh, they did it. They actually hired him.
Well, it's funny that video now has comments from a few different eras. There are, hold on, let me look it up
Yep.
here. Total. So this, no, God bless it. Okay, there we go. So this video actually has like still the most recent comment is from 7 months ago. And then there's a couple of them, people coming here after an interview that I did with Nice, who used to do a lot of like coaching stuff in League of Legends. I don't think he does nearly as much of it anymore, but there was a time where I did some stuff with one of his boot camps. A bunch of people came there after that. I did an interview with Travis Gafford. A bunch of people came there after that. This video gets revisited every now and then, every couple of years. And it's always kind of fun to go back and look at it because it really does have a special place in my heart. This stupid Baron play in this league that had 70 viewers that ended up just making such a colossal difference in the trajectory of my entire adult life.
So what is the lore behind that clip for the people that don't know?
So the lore behind the clip is House Party 5v5 was not an elite, like challenger tier, path to pro type of community. Again, the catchphrase, the slogan, however you'd like to call it, was LCS for the rest of us. They had 2 leagues. They had one for like gold and plat players, and then they had one that was mostly like diamond players with a couple of masters guys. Now remember, this is back when the ladder was very different. There was no iron, there was no emerald. Diamond back then is the equivalent of masters now. So it was still pretty high, but it wasn't like the challenger dudes, you know? Except for one team. There was a team in House Party 5v5 called Syndicate, and Syndicate was by far the highest rated team in the tournament. I believe that they had a single Diamond 1 guy, 3 master players, and a challenger. I don't think GM existed at this time either. So when you're looking at a league that is mostly like the highest teams are a platinum guy, a couple platinum guys, and a few diamond guys, and it's Diamond 1, master, challenger, yeah, they're gonna run the league. And so this was Syndicate playing against a team called Wario's Warriors, which was just a bunch of like, I don't even know if they were all sober every time they played. It was just 5 guys that were friends hanging out and having a good time together doing dumb shit. They were all pretty good. Don't get me wrong. Like they were just as good as the other teams. They were all like platinums and diamonds. But they weren't like this, oh my God, this is the Cloud9 versus your TSM type of thing. No, they were just some guys. And so it was a play where Syndicate was up. They had picked off 2 players from Wario's Warriors. They were going to Baron, 5 versus 3, Syndicate versus anybody. You're just expecting this to be the end of the game. And Wario's Warriors has 3 guys go in and they ace Syndicate and they turn the game on its head. They suplex the game and they end up winning this one single game. This game would be the only game, not series, the only game that Syndicate loses that entire split. They would ace the entire rest of the thing, including future matchups against Wario's Warriors. They just destroyed everyone. 25 minutes, game's over. They had to get out of here and go eat lunch or whatever. But this game, Wario's Warriors made them bleed. And it was just the craziest moment. Nobody expected it. Syndicate was like, in House Party terms, think of it like this. Syndicate in House Party was T1 at Worlds. Everybody was like, no, they're going to win. Everybody else was playing for silver medals. And then they got punched in the mouth, and you saw one of their teeth on the floor, and everybody in the audience is just shocked. So that's why. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I remember back when that YouTube video first got popular, some of the a lot of the comments were like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. But some of the comments were like, oh, why get excited about this? It's just some no-name league. But I feel like that kind of attitude, that sort of just really pessimistic, dismissive attitude, you're not going to get anywhere with that kind of an attitude, right? You need to be able to enjoy things, to celebrate things, to really just not care about what the numbers are, but care about what the emotion, what the feeling is. Even if that feeling is only felt by 50 people watching some community league that nobody else in the world knows about. Hey man, to those 50 people, the Titanic just sank, and it said Syndicate on the side of it.
It was so cool to see it go viral, and I'm pretty sure the guy that posted it on Reddit said like it was like 2 or 3 points away or tiers away from like just disappearing on Reddit, like the trending section, I guess.
Oh wow.
And it was like, I don't know what he did to revive it, but it was just like, it was almost just like fate intervened, and it was just like, no, we got to show this.
No, it was awesome. I couldn't believe it. I still have on an old hard drive or flash drive or something. I don't know. I'd have to dig through the closet and find it. But I still have the screenshot that I took of my client back then because it was back before. For those of you guys who've only been playing League of Legends more recently, when you pop up the friends list, it has the vertical list of all your chats. Used to, it wasn't like that. They lined them up horizontally at the bottom of the screen, and as more chats were active at the same time, the size of each individual window would shrink horizontally. I remember the morning after that clip went viral and I logged into League because, if somebody messaged you while you were offline, it would just put the message down there anyway. I woke up, I couldn't click on the messages because the horizontal bars had shrank so far that when you hovered over them, the only thing that you would be able to click on was the X to cross them out, and you couldn't bring them back up. So I missed half of those messages I never got to read because I had to just click X's on them randomly until there was enough space to click them and actually see what they were. But I still have the screenshot of my client looking like that, just being overwhelmed at the amount of responses from it.
Do you have any special stories from your time in House Party? Like we were briefly chatting about, some guys, they're douchebags, whatever. But do you have do you have just like a story that just, man, I wonder where that guy is, or something like that?
So I still do actually talk to a handful of people from House Party. Crimson Minx is one of my Discord mods. Corrupt Hope, I still talk to a lot of the time just about random games and stuff. I'll talk to him a couple of times a year. Like I still have a couple random people because I had a lot of people from House Party on my friends list, and there's still a few of them in there that'll just message me after an international event or something, just say like, "Damn, saw the cast, bro. Glad to see you're still killing it." Stuff like that, right? Like I still have some interactions with people from back in the day, and I'm always happy to hear from House Party people. I think my favorite story to tell was the one where, because back in season 6, that was when me and Corrupt Hope were both really good. That was back when I was like Diamond 1, when Diamond 1 was actually like something meaningful to achieve, and I was really proud of it. And we shot up the Diamond ladder playing our duo queues together. But yet, so many people in the community for some reason thought that one of us was boosting the other one, but it was divided down the middle on who was the booster and who was the boostee. So people would argue back and forth like, "Yeah, dude, these guys have such a crazy win rate because Flowers is boosting Corrupt," and other people would be like, "No, you idiot, Corrupt is boosting Flowers," and they would just argue back and forth the entire about this all the time. And me and him would just look at it and be like, "What the fuck are you guys talking about? Nobody's boosting anybody. We're duo queuing and we argue for half the time that we're playing because we would play and he would play Lux and I would play Skarner, and I would tell him the way that I was going to drag them. He'd be like, "No, just hold him still because you're making me miss my skill shots." And we would sometimes have a game, we would play, we would win, and then we would argue in a VOD review for an hour about whose fault it was that we didn't win sooner. That's why we were able to win so well, because we were both just sweaty, filthy tryhards.
He definitely boosted you. I will say that.
But no, he did not boost me. What the hell is your problem, bro? You are trolling.
I'm kidding.
You start this interview by saying, "Oh man, your Chad Skarner build, that was ahead of the curve. That got me to diamond. Also, you're boosted. Come on, you're breaking balls."
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no. When we would play together, you forced me on Nard top. Well, you forced me top lane because I'm a jungle main. But you would carry me every single game. No, but
the Chad Skarner, man, good times.
It's so good. When you finally made it to LA. You told a story about sleeping in the players' lounge for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Why?
So when I made it to LA, I had a lot to learn about a lot of things. And one of those things was I was just not really prepared for full adult life. So when I was growing up, and I actually had a conversation with somebody on Twitter about this recently. When I was growing up, my dad worked 2 jobs so that we could live comfortably. My mom bought things in bulk. She shopped for sales. She was someone who was very smart with money. Like she documented everything. They had like a whole ledger of all the expenses and all that. We were able to live comfortably, not because we were very wealthy, but because my parents were both smart and responsible with the way that they handled things. The only bills they ever had were for the car and the house. They didn't use credit cards for buying stuff. So my perception of credit cards growing up was always, oh, this is an optional thing for people who have expensive tastes, right? Who want to have a really fancy car, or who want to buy a new TV every couple of years, or who want to have like that really expensive leather chair that feels super nice and has like the massage thing in it, right? But we didn't have that shit. And so I never had a credit card. I had no credit score. It didn't matter if I had the money. They would, any corporate landlord would simply not even read my application because I had no credit score. I had never had a credit card. And so, yeah, crashing in the player lounge was a result of, yeah, I can't get a corporate landlord to listen to me. And what I ended up doing was a couple of guys that I met at Riot, they had like a large living room that was kind of like, and it had a big curtain thing in it so you could like divide it into 2 rooms. And so I paid them to sleep in half of their living room on an air mattress. And I did that for a couple of months to get out of the player lounge. And then when those 2 guys' lease was up, one of them ended up moving out of California. He got a different gig. And so then me and the other guy got a different apartment as roommates because he had a good credit score, like a really good one. And so we were able to get that based off of him and based off the fact that then I had been working with Riot for long enough that I had like pay stubs showing, hey, even though my credit score looks like a sack of shit, it was like 600 or whatever the awful score is when you just start. Like, this guy's really responsible, and you can see that I have regular pay stubs coming in, so the landlord would at least give us the shot. And so that's how that worked. But yeah, I was just not prepared. I knew the Pythagorean theorem and all that other useless nonsense they teach you in school, but I didn't have the actual real world applications to not be homeless there for a little while.
That's crazy.
It's fun to look back at,
yeah.
But at the time, waking up in the worst part about sleeping in the player lounge, it wasn't bad. The couches were fine. There was a kitchen that had water and stuff in it. It was great. The worst part is the security guards coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning, shining one of those ultra bright flashlights in your face, making sure you're not a bum that snuck in. You have to show them your badge. Just be like, it's okay, bro. Let me sleep.
Did, like, when you showed them the badge, what were they like? Oh, okay, fine. This guy's just a homeless guy that works commentary here.
No, they would just kind of be like, okay, take care of yourself. like obviously they knew that. They were like, I don't know what the hell this guy is doing sleeping here, but he's got a badge, so clearly he's allowed to be here. I'm going back to my job. They don't pay me for this.
That's so, you have a bunch of calls that you've made over the years that are so good. Did you ever think that the Faker Shockwave would still be talked about today as a debated call that you've made in your first year of casting? Or
the way that it exploded? Yeah. So obviously when it first happened, I didn't feel like, oh my God, this is going to be one of the most repeated, reposted plays of all time. But then shortly after, it was like, the year following that, I remember like early 2018, that was back when Peace Pigeon was still making those caster montage videos for League. I remember he made one of me. Obviously, that was in there. A bunch of other clips and montages and stuff for biggest moments of the year had it in there. Once I started seeing it in all those, I figured this is going to be one of the ones that stands the test of time. And I've always been of the opinion that controversy creates content. The two are intertwined. And so the fact that it is debated is really funny. It keeps it more relevant than it otherwise would be, I think. For what it's worth, I still believe that I'm right. I've gone back and I've watched the play 100 different times. I still believe that I'm right. I can understand where other people are coming from, but I don't agree with them. And I do think it's funny, though. Wolf himself, SKT support player during that game, he really plays up the amount of trauma that he has from not being credited with the play. I remember somebody told me, one of the like Korean hyper fans told me that there was a Minecraft server that a lot of the pros and ex-pros in Korea were playing on a couple of years ago, right? Just like exclusive to them. It's just guys who were playing in LCK. And Wolf was in there, and he had some like super tricked out pickaxe, like all of the best enchantments you could possibly get in Minecraft he had on this pickaxe in this Korean pro player server. And he names his pickaxe Shockwave for exactly the reason that you think it's named Shockwave. And I must have laughed for 5 minutes at that. That was the funniest thing I had ever heard in my life.
I have to say, I agree with you. As an ex-caster, I 100% agree that while the Rakan ult is the first big thing that happens, the Shockwave is what is the only call that you can make in that moment.
The Shockwave made it real.
Yes.
The way that I always explain it to people is everyone that's played League of Legends for a long enough amount of time has played a game where you're down 9 or 10,000 gold. It was, I believe, 8.9 thousand gold deficit at the time of this play in that game. So just about 9K. Where you're down 9 or 10,000 gold, and you get what looks like it should be the sickest engage, right? Like a Mumu hits everybody, or Jarvan gets 3 dudes stuck in a cataclysm, something like that, right? And it still doesn't work because you're too far behind. And so to me, when Rakan engages, that's not real yet. When Cho'Gath silences everybody, still not real yet. When Faker's Shockwave makes those health bars light up red, that's when it was real. And in the moment, you don't have time to open up your grocery list and read off every ability cast by every character. That play happens in a snap. And so, as a commentator, your job then is to highlight the thing that tells the greatest story of the moment. And people would push back and say, oh, well, the story is nothing else can happen without Rakan's ulti. And I see that argument, but the reason that I disagree with it is because that's not just that's the story mechanically. Yes, Rakan is the first step in a multiple ability chain that results in them coming back into the game and ultimately winning. However, to be honest, to the emotion of the moment, the emotion of someone who is invested in a League of Legends game, to be invested in an underdog fight where you should, by all accounts, be dead to rights, when those health bars flash red, that is the fuck yes, go, 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 go. That is the one where you know you actually somehow, some way still have a shot in this. And so I believe that I casted that moment as emotionally honestly as I could, and I still think it was correct. That's the full explanation.
That's all that matters. And now casting the World's Finals. So in your first year of casting LCS, you didn't make it that far into Worlds. And from what
1 week of groups.
Right. Everybody in the comment section of all right, guys, that's it for my Worlds. Everyone's like, what? This, if anybody deserves to cast further, it's Flowers. So then the following year, you do end up going far. So now casting the World's Finals, what is that like? The mental preparation, the storytelling preparation? Like, are you nervous at all? Like, what's going on there?
So I've done 2 World Finals now, once in 2018, once again in 2022. The 2017 one, yeah. So 2017, I was still the noob. MSI 2017 to this day is the only international event that has occurred since I became a professional that I was not invited to. Every single other international event I have been invited to. MSI, I was still too green. They didn't invite me. Worlds, they invite me, but they only have me there for play-ins, and they only have me there for week 1 groups. Because again, when you're fresh in there, there's people who have been there for a long time. There's people that are known factors that they know they can count on, right? When you look at, like, you go back to 2018 and you look at it and you've got Freak and Riv and Quickshot, and these guys have been doing it for years and years and years. Even if I'm putting up good numbers and good performances in my freshman year, that's still a freshman year, man. And you've got a varsity squad out there that you know you can count on. So 2017, yeah, I went home after the first week. 2018, so with the World Finals in 2018, I will tell you this. I was never scheduled to do that World Final. I was not in the conversation. To my understanding, in 2018, the only people that were in the conversation for World Finals were Freak and Quickshot. And so for 2018, some people might not know this. All of 2018 Worlds, except for the finals, was remote. The KT versus IG base race, the game 3, was done from the LA studio at 3 o'clock in the fucking morning in front of an empty arena. Like, everything was remote except for the grand final. And so only the people who were slotted to do the grand final were even asked to do paperwork for visas and stuff like that to go to Korea. And I remember I started that world by opening up the whole thing because the remote broadcast was being hosted in North America. So that means NA commentators are going to have a greater presence on play-ins because it is easier and more effective to use host region commentators for play-ins. So I had opened the whole thing with play-ins. They had me scheduled up through groups, up through quarters. They had. So I graduated from groups to quarters this year. The quarterfinal obviously was the KT versus IG thing. Excuse me. Sorry, I just joked on my own spit. Professional speaker, by the way. And so after, I was actually getting a lot of those Reddit threads, like you're talking about, during my performances in both play-ins and groups in 2018. I think I must have had 3 or 4 different threads over the course of just play-ins and groups. And I was doing really well. Like, looking back, I was doing very well, especially for a sophomore year caster. And so after groups was done, I remember our caster manager came up and told me, hey, I want you to do Korean visa paperwork. This does not mean that you are getting the final. This is a precaution being taken because you are now in consideration and we want to make sure that we are prepared for whatever we decide to do. And so obviously, you give them the very calm, composed handshake, like, yeah, for sure, I'll get that done. In my head, I'm freaking the fuck out. Because last year I went home after week 1 of groups. This year I was expecting to make it to quarter. This year my goal was to make it to quarters, and I accomplished that goal. My quarters cast was coming up at this point, and I was like, okay, cool, I accomplished that goal. Next year we'll set sights on semis. My original plan when I made it was year 1, make it to Worlds. Year 2, quarters. Year 3, semis. Year 4, finals. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do finals within 4 years, climbing up the rung of the ladder. I did it in 2. And that happened. So I got told, okay, do the paperwork. That happens. And then the KT versus IG series comes up. It ends up being one of the greatest series ever played. It has that moment in game 3. And I remember that next week, I was told, you're doing the final. And that was one of the most amazing feelings, man. I could not believe it. I was so excited. And yeah, obviously you definitely get some nerves in a moment like that, right? It's a huge deal. I had just like 2 years before that point, I had never casted a professional game. 2 years before that point, I was still interviewing with Riot, and now I'm doing the world final. So it definitely gets to you. I feel like I did okay in my first world final in 2018, but it definitely could have been better. The games themselves didn't do me any favors. Like the IG versus Fnatic, in my opinion, is the worst world final of all time in terms of game quality. Just because it was so one-sided. Every game it felt like it was over so early. It's harder to make something epic out of that. But it's also not fair for me to just say, oh yeah, game quality was bad, so obviously I couldn't put on a top-tier performance. I think I did all right. But I don't think that it was my best work. I think that the KT IG series was far, far better, both in terms of game quality and in terms of cast quality. Coming back again in 2022, which was the second year that I did it, that was my goal. Because North America had not had Worlds since 2016. Going into 2022, I had never got to experience a North American Worlds as a commentator. I started in 2017, right after the last one. 2017 was Worlds in China. 2018, Worlds in Korea. 2019, Worlds in EU. 2020, COVID hits. Worlds and everything else globally are torpedoed. It's a remote shit show. And that's not an insult at Riot. It's just saying the entire world is a shit show right there. Don't be mad, Riot. I promise. I'm not dogging you here. 2021 was also still kind of a semi-remote shuffle, jumble, whatever you want to call it. 2022, then, it's back in NA. And I remember telling everybody who I thought might have a chance to call any kind of a shot at Riot, hey, my goal is I want the world final this year. I will consider anything less a personal and professional failure. If at any point during this year I am not on track to be able to accomplish that goal, I need you to reach out and tell me what is not up to level, what needs to be improved, what needs to change, because this is the goal. Nothing else matters. And that's what I did. That's what I wanted. That's what I was after. And so doing the one in 2022, I was so excited for it. I wanted it really badly. Obviously it ends up being the absolute value of the previous one, 2022 World Finals, the greatest World Final of all time, arguably the greatest series of all time. Some people still having the SKT Rocks from 2016 ranked higher in their own personal rankings than that one. I know a lot of European fans have the G2 versus SKT series also potentially ranked higher than that one because that was just such a huge moment for them personally as fans. But for me, that is the greatest series of all time. And it's definitely the best world final of all time. And I thought that I also personally had a much better performance for it. I really enjoyed it. It was a ton of fun. Casting that with Kadril and Kobe, being there in the packed arena, being able to look out as you go to Silver Scrapes and just see all the phones with the lights waving back and forth. And you just have this anime storyline with the teams and the two main players that honestly, I think if you tried to, because you know how we had the league show that came out on Paramount with players, right? I think that if you tried to put the SKT DRX Faker Deft story in a show like Players and in like a TV adaptation of League, you would have longtime players of the game complaining about it for being too unrealistic, too scripted, too manufactured. Because it just seemed like, man, these guys went to high school together, the rivalry, like the Cloud versus Sephiroth type of the scrappy guy that ultimately wins versus the dude who has every accomplishment under the sun. Like it was so perfect. And so for that one, I wasn't nervous at all. I was just excited. I was so ready to get another shot at it. I was so happy to be doing it again.
It's so that's so cool. I love these stories here. So
That one was long-winded. Sorry about
no,
that. That was a lot to cover.
the thing with me as an interview, and I need to get better at this, is that I just get caught so in the moment of listening to a story that when the story's over, I'm like, oh shoot, it's my turn to talk. So that's where I'm at right now. But regardless, what was a weird moment for me was I became a Ludwig fan
Okay.
after like my League of Legends stint. And so I've just been following him for years. And then to see you on his stream, I was like, this is a weird crossover of worlds.
Yeah, what worlds collide, right?
Yeah, it was so.
Like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. You had a call, and all of the comments were saying this under his League of Legends video on YouTube. He might not have any friends, but he doesn't have any more enemies, is what you called when Ludwig playing a Mumu killed the bot lane.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a, like, where do you come up with these calls? Because it's like, how did he come up with that? Drinking a beer, you're not all there.
That was actually water. That was water.
Oh, that's my bad.
Yeah,
That's my bad.
Yeah. No, it was just water for those. I've definitely had some beer casts, some whiskey casts on my own stream and everything before. But no, over at Ludwig's place, it was just, we were just chilling with water on those. But no, the creativity I think is a huge part of the job. Like, I think I've never been someone who likes getting too bogged down in technicalities. I think that things need to be fun. They need to be engaging. They need to be celebrated. I don't want to just cast League of Legends as if it's something on a spreadsheet that I need to accurately describe in the most mechanical way possible. I do want to do that. But I want to make it happen in a way that feels very unique. And one thing about League of Legends is you have so many different characters with so many different things that you can lean into with him, right? If it's Tom Kench, you want to talk about him, like you want to use things about how he's hungry for this or he devours that or whatever, right? If you have a Mumu, the thing about friends and enemies, that's resonant because it applies to the character. Like Darius and Garen doing dunk stuff. Like those are easy wins. There's just so many creative ways that you can say things because the reality of it is, if you always describe things the same way when you're playing something like League of Legends, your commentary is going to get stale. And so I really like to always just express things in a creative way because I think it makes it more engaging. Variety is the spice of life. No matter how cool something is, after it happens enough times, it's no longer cool or engaging. Remember when Udyr was a pro play champion, like the old Udyr, the one that looked like a PlayStation 1 character? And for the first week, everybody was like super into it. They were like, oh my God, dude, I thought Udyr was just a sack of shit. And now he's in pro and he's running around and it's working and it's crazy. And then after a month of Udyr, everyone wanted to throw Udyr in a ditch because they were just sick of seeing Udyr every single game. I was one of them. I was like, you guys put him down there, I'll hit him with the truck. We need to get him out of pro. I don't like Udyr anymore. And your commentary will become Udyr if you are not creative, if you are not varied. You need to be able to make things interesting, even if you've already seen them a bunch of times. And so with Ludwig playing a Mumu, like that's a character I don't get to cast very much. And so I didn't want to cast it just like it's, a Sejuani or something like that. You want to lean into the character, lean into the personality, and just make it fun, especially in Ludwig's case, because Ludwig's not a League of Legends streamer. The people watching Ludwig's stream don't want to hear about how, oh, Ludwig got an amazing play, and now that means automatically they'll go for Baron and reset their lanes. They don't know what the hell any of that means, right? Ludwig does IRL content. He does variety content. He does a ton of content that's not League of Legends. And so I think it's also specifically important to consider your audience and just when you're casting something like that, you're not making a League of Legends product. You're making an entertainment product. And for an entertainment product, we need to play off of the things that people can know at a cursory glance. You look at a Mumu, you know he is one sad son of a bitch that ain't got no friends because his abilities are to cry on people. So let's talk about it. That's the way I look at it.
Do you have a call that you've made and you'll think back to it every once in a while and you're like, huh, this doesn't really get a lot of praise, but it's my favorite?
Well, I mean, it's not really the question that you're asking, but it is one that I get a kick out of, which was the Tom Kench lick in the bush one. That one was great. I still remember that. That was TSM versus Echo Fox 2018.
Yep.
Because honest to God, I did not intend for that meaning to be what I was saying. It didn't even occur to me. And then after the 2 seconds of dead silence and looking at Zyrene and him just doing this face at me, and then the crowd busts up laughing like it's a laugh track from Jerry Seinfeld, I was like, wait, shit. And the part that none of you guys heard on that call was our producer Arthur on my headset going, what was that? And and they're just trying to get back into the game. Obviously, it wasn't the most hype call. It wasn't the most in the moment. It was probably immersion breaking for plenty of people. But I loved that one because it was just so genuinely stupid and fun that every now and then I'll remember that one and I'll still get a laugh out of it.
I might not include this in the final cut, but I do want to say that my favorite call that you've made with me was it was you were, I think you were about to make LCS, and what happened was that there was a guy, like an ADC on the enemy team, who got like Malphite ulted, just knocked up just to smithereens, and you go it was like Jinx getting more knocked up than the amount of girls in a pregnancy center. And I was like, what? You're allowed to say that?
that sounds like something 2016, like house party era.
So funny. And I just
yeah.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't respond. I couldn't. And you just went, doesn't matter, Daniel. Anyways.
Those are the ones that you definitely can't say those on like the official shows, but those are the ones that are fun to do on like your own channel types of things, the community content type of things. Those ones are those ones are a lot of fun, man. Like that's like the other one that people always laugh about was the one that I said on my own stream during like I think it was during Champions Queue streams leading up to Worlds in like 2020 or 2021, when I was talking about how I had to untrain myself from saying certain things because whenever I was talking to friends or just talking out loud to myself playing League, whenever Jax would do E, I would call it the helicopter dick, but you can't call it that on the official show. And so once I got hired by Riot, I had to untrain. And then everybody on Vedius ends up clipping it or something and posting on Twitter about how somebody clips it, posted on Reddit, and the title was Captainflowers discussing casting struggles. And then Vedius tweeted about how I saw my friend Flowers had a thread about him and some struggles he was having with casting, so I go to watch the clip to see if it's something that I can offer some friendly advice on or something. And then it's just, no, he's complaining about not being able to talk about dicks on the show. That one was a lot of fun. And to this day, I feel like people, whenever Jax gets locked in, it's not to the tier of Skarner, but it is a thing where I'll get messages on Twitter. If Jax is not in the meta, people will be like, bro, Jax just got locked in on LCK. Wake up, start watching. Just because they want to hear the helicopter dick comment. So that's another good one that you can't say it on main broadcast, but it's still funny as hell in general community sentiment.
Yeah, and you do it in the Captainflowers way. Helicopter dick. Like you add that.
Close up support these.
It's so good. And going back to Ludwig, did you ever think he would hit Plat as fast as he did? Like Silver 2 to Plat 4 is pretty insane in like 3 days.
I told him he could do it. Well, because I knew he's a full-time content creator, so it's not like he has to, go to work or do anything else. If he says, hey, the theme for this month is League, and we're grinding League, I know he has the time to put into it. And he was making some good plays during the stuff that I was spectating, right? Obviously, there is still some goofy stuff because he's playing in Silver, right? Like, you're going to do goofy stuff in Silver. But I even told him and Connor before I left, I was like, if you guys keep this up, you will hit that goal. And he hit it. So I'm just saying, just like I did with calling Skarner being OP, I called Ludwig hitting Plat, bro. I'm prophesizing.
I do want to thank you for sitting down with me for as long as you are. One last question.
One last question. Okay.
What's next for Flowers? The guy who's done it all in League. Do you have any other plans? Like, what's going on?
Well, obviously it's a big shakeup this year with everything happening in League, with everything happening specifically in like North America, with the whole restructuring of things to be America's stuff, kind of like Valorant. I don't watch Valorant. I'm not really attuned to how things work over there or really what it is. So this year is going to be a lot of learning for me as well. One thing that I will be doing this year that they just announced earlier today, so I can finally talk about it. This timing actually works out really well because this was NDA'd yesterday. Timing for this works out really well is that Riot did decide to let the talent that they have signed for the real show to also be co-streamers for the Southern Conference. So one thing I'm going to be experimenting with this year is I'm still going to be casting, LTA, which is LCS, like rebranded, full-time professionally. But then also I'm going to be waking up and casting the Brazil League every morning before LCS/LTA. So I'll be doing the Brazil League as a Captainflowers product on my own channel with all of the helicopter dicks and the lick in the bush and all that other shit. And then I'll be doing the official professional show for LCS/LTA North afterwards. So that's kind of going to be one of the main adventures this year, is doing co-streaming stuff now that I've finally got a green light to do some official co-streaming while also still doing the professional show. So we're going to see how that goes. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
This has been awesome, Flowers. Thanks, man, for sitting down.
Hell yeah, man.
Thanks. All right, guys. See you later.
See ya.